Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Scott with Keeping It Real Bass Fishing. Hope you had a great week. We're going to jump back in here and talk about schooling fish. We were talking about bass in particular, largemouth bass schooling, and we were out on Gunnersville last week talking about that and how to locate, how to find those largemouth bass schooling this time of year, where to kind of go look for those. And I told you I was going to show you some lures that I have found over my years of experience that are really good lures. I would say my top 5, and maybe show you a little more, but I'm going to say we're going to start off. My top 5 lures I use to catch schooling bass. And I've been catching schooling bass very well, successfully over all the years. Started out with, as a young fellow out fishing a lot with bass fishing, that is, about every weekend out with my dad, and he's the one who taught me, between him and some other fellas, and we talk, guys have been fishing longer than I've been fishing, going on 40, probably about over 40 something years now. I started when I was probably about 10 years old bass fishing, so I've been at it, I'd say on pretty regular, knowing basically I started bass fishing whenever I was in my teen, knowing what I was really doing and was up against, and just learning how to really be competitive. And in my early 20s, I got into tournament fishing, bass fishing, running the tournament trail and stuff, and did that for a bunch of years, and learned a lot through those years. And like I said, I'm 56 now, man. I've been bass fishing ponds, lakes, small lakes, big lakes, reservoirs, and done a little bit of all of it. And you can learn something from anybody. I don't care who you are. If you're a pro and a retired pro, you like to call yourself, you can still learn something too. I learn something from anybody, something new every day. Somebody knows a trick or two. I got a few up my sleeve, but I tell you, a lot of good bass fishermen are not going to tell you everything they know. But I will tell you, like I say, successfully, I have caught a lot of fish schooling. I have caught a lot of bass schooling, and I've used certain lures. I've caught bass on schooling more than others, and that's why I want to show you my top 3, and then I'll maybe show you the top 5 or so that I would recommend as your secondary arsenal you want to have just in case. All right, it's going to be a good one. Stay tuned. Let's go. All right, guys, let's go. Talking about how to catch schooling bass and what lures I'm going to suggest and recommend to catch the schooling bass on. This is what, if I was headed out to, say, Gunnersville today, and I know right now where I can go find bass schooling. And I'm not saying I'm the only one, but I've been down there several times here in the past month chasing after these things, and I haven't seen nobody out. I ain't seen not one bass fisherman out fishing trying to catch these schooling bass. Not one. I don't know if they just don't care, or they don't know how, or they don't know where they're at. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe they're out trying to catch that big one. But you can't always go just catch that big one. You'll have a go fish and all day long and not catch fish. This time of year is tough catching them big fish, and it's heat like it is. So it's fun to go down in the evening time, and you can go down 3 or 4 o'clock and start fishing, get ready for them, and fish the dark, and you catch you a mess of schooling fish. It's just fun, and you may not catch them. You may try, but they can be challenging. All right, let's go. I'm going to show you the number one lure I like to use throwing at schooling fish is a spook. There's different kinds of spooks. You got big spooks, you got medium-sized spooks, and you got puppy spooks. Now, here's a puppy spook. That's what I always call it. Hopefully you see that. It's just a small spook. He's about 3 or so inches long. This one here is clear. Now you can get them different colors. There's chrome, there's white, there's black, they're different colors. There's, I have one that's even a fire tiger. This is a good one to throw. I'm going to tell you something. I just don't share a lot, but I'm going to share it with you. Now, with spooks, they make what's called a front runner. Spooks are a good lure to go after schooling fish with, particularly a puppy spook. Now, I showed you a clear one, clear spook, puppy spook. I'm talking about the baby spook, whatever you want to call it. You know, you got different colors. You got the fire tiger color, there's black, there's chrome, there's white. The fish only going to see the bottom of this lure. So all that painting on the top and all that fancy color is to sell you, to get you to buy it. That fish ain't going to see it. That thing sitting on top of the water, that bass is looking up like this, and all he's seeing is the bottom and that commotion that thing's making. So you got to think about that when you're throwing this, whatever color it is, what kind of clarity of the water you have. If that water's super clear, you know, you want to throw something that's not so, you know, I guess you should say something that's really going to stand out. You don't want to be throwing like a chartreuse or orange or red or black or something of that nature. Not when you're trying to catch schooling fish. This time of year, the shad are very small. Usually they done hatched out. By this time we've found the 4th of July. You know, the shad done hatched out and they're just real small. They probably maybe half the size of this spook right here. And they're balled up, and you'll see them balled up in the tops, around the top of the water, in the backs of the creeks. Basically, where the deeper water is, in the middle of the channel of the creek. Usually late evening, and then they'll start moving back. Sometimes they hang around the deeper water around the points that have flats. They'll hang around those areas, and you just have to look for them. And the bass will be underneath them, usually pretty deep. Now those shad, a lot of times it's a lot of shad in there. They'll be in different depths, suspended themselves, 5 feet, 10 feet. And if you have a depth finder, you'll see that the fish will be bogged up around them too. So they have a lot of food to eat, and at that time of the year, so there's not a lack of. So sometimes it'd be very hard to catch them, especially underneath the shad. If you're trying to catch them on the bottom or suspended, they can be very challenging. Best time to catch them is when they come up on the top. Don't worry about them, just catch the schooling fish. When the bass come up on the top of the water, start busting like crazy on them boogers, be ready to fire in them. You gotta be waiting on it. Fire in them things, and you want to throw past it and work it through it, and try to get the timing right while they're up feeding. And then while you're coming through there, one's gonna grab whatever you're throwing more than likely. Usually they do. When they're feeding like that, because when one starts, they all start, and they just go crazy. But what I want to show you, this is an old way of running a spook, a puppy spook. I don't see nobody throwing this. It's what you call a front runner. You can see the nose of it, you see the sides of it. Hold it still for the cameraman. I don't even know if they still make it. You might be able to find them online. I don't know. I ain't bought none. I've got 2 or 3 of them. I had them for years. Has a treble hook on the end of it with a feather. Has a eye hook on the back. You tie your leader on, and then you tie your spook off the end of it. You know, this helps you throw the spook. It gives it a little bit more weight so you can throw it further, but it also helps you walk that thing behind it. Just having that thing, and this thing's doing this right here in the front, and this is skirting back and forth and walking the dog with this thing. Now, if they're schooling aggressively, you can catch 2 at a time. You want to grab this front runner and on this boat. because I have caught them a lot like that in the past. So if you find you some find you these front runners, is what we always call them. Like I say, you shoot me a comment if you need some more information on this, and I'll try to get you what you need so that you can find them. You have to go online and look for them. I hadn't looked for them either, so I don't even know. I have what I've gotten, and I just don't need anymore. Now, there's also other size spooks you can use as well at work without the front runner. You can try, like I say, you can try different things. Sometimes they just want something different, and that could drive you crazy trying to figure out what they want. Sometimes you ain't gonna catch them. They just got their mind on them shad, and that's it. But hey, it's fun trying. But you can try what I say. It's called a medium-sized spook. This one here is silver. It's got a whitish silver color looking bottom and the size of silver. Now that's what's important when you buy these lures. And if you look at that thing, oh, that's pretty. You got silver and chartreuse. That bass ain't seeing all that. Now he may see a little bit of the sides of the reflection on the surface of the water underneath from the sun reflecting off of it like a mirror. But mostly he's going to see that. So, when you're throwing what you're throwing, look at the bottom. Where it's, and you just fire that thing out there in the middle of those bass blowing up on those shad schooling, and just walk it through there quickly, and they'll grab it. Sometimes that's what they want. Even though it's bigger than the shad the shad they're chasing, I'd say might not be, but it's too long. And this might be the ticket because it just happens to be bigger and it's easier for them to get instead of chasing out those little ones. There's different colors in these. You get white bone, there's clear, chartreuse, all the different colors out there. You just have to figure out what color you want to, best for you. But like I say, it's the bottom. Now I can tell you my personal opinion and preferences is if you got this way. Put it this way, my personal preference is the yellow. Like a dark chartreuse, or not really a chartreuse, is a yellow bottom. You say, well, why? Because the water, it don't matter if the water's clear, if the water's stained. Now, if it's muddy, you want, obviously, I'm talking about in clear water, stained water, throwing these lures. If the water's muddy and murky, then you're going to go to some other lures I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But like I say, this would be clear or semi-stained water, visibility 2, 3, 4 feet, something like that. These lures will work for you. Sometimes the popar work too. And you got different popars. The popar will work for you. You can pop that through the water when they're schooling sometimes, and they'll eat the popar. You just have to try, different things to see what they want. Now these are just some lures I'm giving you ideas to use. They ain't my top lures. They're not my top 3. But anybody recognize what this is? Some of you fellas been around fishing for a minute, you might. It's what they call a swimming image. It's a Bill Dance series made by Excalibur. Has that rattle in it. It walks, you walk it back like you do a spook, but it's got a faster dart, and you don't have to retrieve it fast. You just work it, and it sits there. It stays in that area a lot slower. It's slower than a spook. And last summer I was catching them on this. I made a video on swimming image where I was catching them. I was in a pond catching them on this very lure right here in this time of the year when it was hot. On top. Those are some good lures to catch them, on top. when they're schooling like that, just to throw in there. Then yes, regular topwater lures, yes, you throw and catch them on topwater when they're feeding on topwater, but we're talking about schooling bass. They do work on schooling bass. And probably one of the, I'd say it's probably my number 3 ticket right here. Try to narrow it down a little bit for you. Number 3 is the spinnerbait. Now it ain't just any old spinnerbait. We're talking about a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait, 60 shad color, double willow leaf blades. These here have the scales on, which gives extra deflection. If I can get it for the camera. You can find them like this, or you can just throw them with a just regular double willow leaf with a, either one will work. These here have more reflection in water, which is great, because what you want to do with this spinnerbait, you want to throw it out really back fast where it's skimming. That thing's just coming right across the top of the water. I mean, it's right at the top of the water, causing this blade to come out of the top. These blades will come out of the top of the water and flipper, ain't even a word. Come out of the top of the water and just flip and come across the water. They just flip and splash, and that thing's running across like that. And you bass look underneath this thing, and when they're looking at it, they seeing looks like to them looks like another fish chasing bait fish. That's what it's supposed to symbolize. If you didn't already know that. Anyway, get it out of the camera. You can't see it well. Sorry. But anyway, a scoop bass is chasing shad, especially if they're that size shad. If they're small shad like we're talking about, you could probably go down to a 3/8 and get some real small blades and try that and see if that would work. But I like throwing the 1/2 ounce this with the willow leaves this size. It's heavier, I can throw it further, I can crank it back faster, and it runs straight. It'll run straight. If you go to a 3/8 or something smaller, try to crank it back too fast, it'll want to turn sideways on you. So that, you gotta, so you can't really run it on the top and flip it like you can a 1/2 ounce, not as good. So that's why I stick with this. It works in this shad color and with these blades. It worked very well. It's just, if I'm out chasing schooling fish and trying to catch them like I have been and probably will the rest of this month, we'll see what August brings. August usually is just too hot to do anything. But I definitely will have this spinnerbait tied on to go after them. And another item that I would highly recommend having on, another item I would recommend having tied on, which would probably be my number 2 lure I would have on, is a Lipless crankbait. And that's no big one. You see how small it is? It's like an 1/8 ounce. It's a small, real small. It's about the same size as the bait fish. You gotta have it on. You gotta have it on a spinner reel. I don't think you throw it on a bait caster. Just have it on a good spinner reel with some, maybe 10-pound line. I'm using fluorocarbon, about 10 pounds, and it throws it pretty good. I tried throwing it with the braid, and it just seemed like the fluorocarbon throws it better for some reason because it's so small. But anyway, that's probably my number 2 lure I'd have tied on. I definitely would have one tied on, and a Lipless crankbait. Like I say, this is an 1/8 ounce. It's the same size as the shad. You can bump up, go to a 1/4 ounce. In 1/2 ounce this time of year is, at throwing at schooling fish is I think too big. You can throw it if you want. You might catch one underneath, to catch you a big one laying up underneath them. Throw it out there, and then I have done that. Throw it out, crank it, and let it fall. And come to the shad, crank it to the shad, and just stop and let it fall, and just kind of jerk it back and forth. Jerk it, crank it a little bit, and let it fall. And jerk it, and let it crank it up a little bit, and let it fall. It looks like a dying shad. And then big bass are laying up underneath that ball of shad, waiting on those shad that are getting hit by the smaller bass, and they're dying, and they float down to the bottom. But them big bass will lay up underneath there just waiting on them, so they're easy prey and eat them as they fall. You know, sometimes they think, I mean, it imitates that, so sometimes it may work. It's worth a try if you want to throw a bigger one. You could probably do the 1/4 ounce that way. I have done that too. You know, those are some things to try with a rattle trap or a lipless crankbait. There's different ones you might want to throw other than rattle trap. You can throw, but I would definitely have an 1/8 ounce one on, running it fast. You know, when those fish are schooling in those shad, run it through there really fast, and you'll definitely grab you one, usually very easily. And if you're kind of like sitting around waiting for them to come back up, to start, you know, schooling again, and you're getting bored, you can have your 1/4 ounce, have a 1/2 ounce rattle trap on, or lipless crankbait, like I say, whichever brand you like to throw. And you can fire it out in the areas where you know there's fish underneath the shad, and just crank it in through there, and you burn it through there, or you can crank it, let it fall, crank it, let it fall. See if you can stick you something in the meantime. Those things kind of work. I've done that through the years and caught bass, but it don't work every time. Just a tip if you didn't know that. And believe it or not, guys, one of the lures I like to throw more than anything is a crankbait. And you can catch schooling bass on a crankbait. But I've thrown a lot of crankbaits and they've really not been successful catching them on other crankbaits but this one. Now there may be other ones out there. Of course I hadn't thrown every one there ever that they make. But everybody likes to throw a Spro, I'm sure. But this Spro right here, the 60 shad series, it's the shallow running series. You know, the square bill, and it runs probably 3 to 5 feet. It's a killer when it comes to this shad. And when it comes to catching these schooling fish on these shad, you can fire that puppy right out there in the thick of them, and busting on top, and and even right after they stop, you can throw fan casts and throw out there in them. And I have caught and slayed them on this thing. There's a couple of videos where I was catching them. I filmed I was catching some schooling fish, and I think a couple of videos back, catching schooling fish on that very crankbait right there. And crankbait is, in other words, can be fun when you catch them on that particular lure right there. It's if you enjoy throwing a crankbait. It's fun catch. I throw it, catch them every cast. But I told you there's also one other item I'd like to show you right quick. And there's other items you could throw, but if I can get it in the camera, I don't know if I can let me see if I can hold it by the hook. Anybody recognize what that is? It looks like a bass, a crappie jig. But it's actually a bass jig. It's what they call a grub, bass grub. It's a grub. I don't know if you call it a bass grub, it's a fishing grub. But most of us catch bass on. I don't know how many people throw at, we used to throw them all the time. And people kind of get away from stuff and they just don't do it anymore. But that booger right there, you can fire that thing out there in the thick of them when they're schooling. It'll catch them too. Those are, you know, some really popular lures to throw. Actually, those are some really good tips. Some good lures to throw trying to catch schooling bass. You can try, you know, all the different ones I've shown you and just figure out what they want. One of them was bound to work, and I'm sure you're going to have fun catching them. Now this, you can throw, another item I didn't mention though, you can throw like a swim bait. If you got a well, that jig is almost like a swim bait, but you can you can throw little small swim baits They make small ones like this one here. If you can see it on where it's tied on. That's a little small swim bait here. It looks big, but it really ain't. It probably ain't maybe 3-4 inches long. Those little swim baits can work good too. I found, I don't catch as many fish on that swim bait, but every once in a while you might stick you one, especially when they stop aggressively feeding and chasing and acting stupid. You know, where they're kind of like this one feeding here and one pumping eating here. Then that comes, you fire that thing out there where it's at, and usually you can catch one that way. And the crankbait works good like that too. But the spook, I would say number one would be your spook, your puppy spook, especially that front runner and that puppy spook would be key on catching schooling bass whenever they're very aggressive on top. And number two, you want to have your good spinner bait, like I showed you, ready. That works very well. 3, have your Spro. That's the one you want right there. Now, colors, you can switch around with colors depending on the stain of the water. At some reservoir, the colors work better. I was on one the other day or the other week, and the silver, the Spro that's silver, green, got a little chartreuse, a little blue on the back. That's the one they wanted to eat. They wouldn't touch that one. So it does make a difference in certain waters for some reason. But it was still a Spro, same size Spro. I was catching them all. You saw the video if you watched it. And you just gotta, that grub, you could go to a white grub or maybe a bass color, like a pumpkin seed, or there's all different color grubs. Bass usually is white. Make it simple, guys. White, that chartreuse like I showed you, or something, maybe green pumpkin or something of that nature. That's really all you need on those 3 to catch bass. You might end up catching more than bass on that grub. But those things will work if you have those things tied on and ready to on you. Well, have them in your arsenal. But if you're going to school and have them in your arsenal, I should say, at all times. But if you're going out just divinely to go catch schooling bass, have at least 3 of those tied on, preferably the top 3 I told you, and you'll have a good time, and you'll definitely catch you some schooling bass if they're up feeding aggressively like I know them to be, especially this time of year. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the channel, enjoyed the video. I'm sorry, I hope you liked the channel, but enjoyed the video. It's hot as a firecracker. It's 4th of July, and it should be. All right, guys. Till next time, y'all keep it real. It's Scott with Keeping It Real Bass Fishing. Let's go get that big one. Y'all take care. Alright, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video today. Appreciate you joining the channel. If you would hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And until next time.